Hello and welcome to Ask GMBN Tech. Now, this is one of my favourite shows because we get to answer your questions. So, as you're watching the show and you're thinking, you know what, I've got a question that I need an answer to, then get in the comments using the hashtag AskGMBNTech. Ask away and hopefully we can feature it on the show. So, on with the questions. The first question is from Lou, and they say, they basically recently got their bike mechanic certification and they're looking for a kit that they can combine in their luggage for when flying abroad. So they're looking for something that has all the essentials, all the must-haves, but has the constraints of needing to be light and work on a variety of bikes. So really good question. I think that normally you see mechanics go down one of two routes, either having like a briefcase setup, so like a Pelican box, a camera box, or a specialist toolkit, or they have like a wrap. Now the advantage of using a wrap is it can be a lot lighter, and because it's soft, it can just go in your kit bag. So what I use when I travel, although it sounds like maybe we have slightly different demands, is I've got a toe peak ratchet set, which is super useful, and I think they're absolutely great. The variety of jobs you can do in them is absolutely huge. I take a shock pump, and I take a pressure gauge. Now, another tool that is good is a set of Nipex, so adjustable pliers, because you've got basically any spanner in there. Now, I'm not doing full rebuilds. I'm tweaking my bike whilst on a shoot or on holiday. So, like I said, they might be slightly different. Maybe you could throw in a soft, like toffee hammer, just in case you need to, tap out any axles or anything. But it largely depends on the bike and the stuff you can be working for. Some hubs, for instance, still use cone spanners. That's something the Nipex wouldn't be able to do. You're gonna get a grip over time. I'd say a really good starting place though is a good set, a good ratchet set of Allen keys because, well, I find them super useful. The next question is from Diamond, and they say, "Hi GMBN, I'm currently riding a 2018 Trek Fuel 29er. Up front, I have a RockShox Recon RL. And the problem is that the lockout does not work and it stays quite soft and doesn't stiffen up. What do you think the problem is? Is it the damper?" Well, I can say pretty confidently it is the damper, but it's quite a simple problem to fix. So with that damper, with that motion control damper, I want you to imagine a cylinder coming down. And to look at it, that's what it would look like, admittedly with some holes in. At the bottom of that cylinder is a little port that can be open or closed via that lockout lever at the top. Now this damper sits above a pool of oil, so it almost acts like a plunger. Now, even if you close off that damper, so it's completely locked out, but the oil level isn't high enough, then it's going to initially be quite soft before hitting that ramp up. So what you want it to do is get the oil level perfect, so it's just, sits just below the bottom of the damper, and so when it submerges into the pool of oil, it will lock it out straight away. So setting the oil level is absolutely vital. So where does the oil go? Well, over time, the oil can migrate into the lower through the seal at the bottom. Now, what I would suggest doing is doing a low leg service, setting the oil height correctly there, or the oil level, and also just double checking, emptying and double checking the oil quantity in that upper part of the tube. What you don't want to do is either be running too much oil in the top, because otherwise it will give you a really horrible feeling. You could damage the part, or excess oil could migrate into the lowers. And what you don't want to be doing is running too much oil in the lowers, because as you can imagine, as you compress the forks, if the pressure builds up to an amount that it's not meant to, it can blow your seals up. If you've ever seen, a seal ridden halfway up a fork leg, that's often the problem. So it's a really simple thing. It's actually pretty cool because it's nice to explore the inside of your forks and find out what's going on. And check SRAM's website to look at the oil levels and also the procedure, but I'm sure you can do it okay. Next question is from Stefan, and they say they're a 14-year-old and hoping to get a job at a bike shop. When thinking about tasks, they couldn't work out the proper order to install components, e.g. brakes, then gears, then dropper. Any comments on the easiest way to install stuff? Well, it really depends on the bike that you're doing, I guess. I personally find that I'd like to leave, say if I was doing a complete frame build, I like to get all the cabling sorted first thing. So, just leave excess amounts sticking out the end, because you don't want to be putting in the fork in and the bottom bracket. And then you find out that both jobs have made putting the cables through significantly harder. So I get that done and then I move on. I normally leave setting the cable tension of the dropper as the very last thing, but I mean, it depends on bike to bike. Yeah, I like to get the bike, really with its wheels on, handlebars on, and everything where I like it before really finalising, things like the cable tension, because I like to get all my cables and hoses as short and as neat as possible. But yeah, it comes with experience. Just work on bikes and you'll find out the efficient way and the not efficient way, sure enough. So next question is from Andres, and they say, why are bike shop employees so mean? Well, I mean, to be honest, if you were to go into a restaurant and you were served by Simon Cowell and he's giving you a load of grief over the way you hold your soup spoon, you just wouldn't go. You vote with your feet. I mean, why are bike shops employees so mean? I mean, if you're being treated unfairly, go somewhere else. I don't know if you want me to give them a ring or something. Maybe, can talk it out as a group session. I don't know. Yeah, just go somewhere where they treat you nicely. And if you're being treated unfairly, just go somewhere else. Simple. Next question is from Tyler, and they say, I've been working in a bike shop for 4 years now, and I want to get into an industry job, preferably product design. But I don't want an engineering degree. Is there any way to get into product design position without a degree? I fully understand geometry and part specs, but I don't want to design the leverage ratio or anything like that. Well, I think without a degree, then your best bet is racing or via a self-startup. When you're working at races, you make a lot of contacts, conversations might happen, you can illustrate your knowledge. As far as bike design goes, listen, it's not a case of I don't want to design the leverage ratio or anything like that. That's what your job would be. So it's not going to be like you do all the angles and someone else does that. You need to have a quite holistic approach to bike design and your understanding of it. There are so many companies that do really, really cool stuff. I'd say 76 Projects is a great example. They do 3D printed mounts and things like that, and now they're everywhere and you see them on all sorts of bikes. And there's some companies that start as a startup and then basically they do that and generate experience and generate contacts, and maybe they are then amalgamated, or then they go and work for another industry player. I think the best thing is just basically trying to make contacts, trying to do something where you can demonstrate your knowledge and how much you know and your passion. And there are some fantastic bike designers that I know that, don't have engineering degrees, but they've just done so by probably right place, right time, but also being able to illustrate their knowledge and how they can apply it to bike design. Next question is from Elliot, and they say that their dropper post is stuck in their carbon frame. Now, they've tried pulling on it and twisting on it and it won't move at all. They spoke to their local bike shop and they said it could crack my frame if I kept trying to pull on it. Please, can you help me? Well, it sounds like a sticky situation, if you'll excuse the pun. I'm gonna throw this out to the room. This is what I would do, but please in the comments let me know what you would do if you have any advice. I would personally try and soak it in something like TF2, literally over a period of 24 hours, just keep adding it up, and hoping that it would eventually basically release a bit of the bind. I've been told before that when you're exerting a great amount of force in a pull on a carbon tube, the tube's actually elongating slightly, and as it elongates, and I'm talking on a very small level, but it's also reducing the diameter. So as you're pulling on it, the tube might be stretching and reducing its diameter, which is then binding the seat post more. So a bit of a tricky situation. Before, I've done some pretty ropey things to get some seat posts out of seized frames. I've put a stem on it, and from the stem, I've attached a handlebar. I mean, it's not exactly what you'd want. I would probably, if you're worried about your carbon frame, I would probably actually speak to a carbon specialist. I've used them before for things like cracked frames, etc., and repairing them. And honestly, from my experience with local carbon specialists, it wasn't that expensive. They were super useful and they have the expertise to tell you. But yeah, get in the comments, guys. What would you advise Elliot to do? Have you suffered from this problem before? It used to be pretty common with metals bonding together. But yeah, carbon, it's a difficult one. Get in the comments. What do you do? The last question is from Yokes and Spokes. And they say that the guys at my local bike shop say Hope floating brake rotors are not compatible with SRAM Guide R brake calipers. Why is that? And is there any way to make them compatible? I believe it's the actual wider part of that rotor, the kind of floating part, fouls on the caliper. Listen, for me, I just use the same brand caliper as I do a rotor. There are some exceptions. Maybe someone like Galfa makes some pretty cool rotors. But I probably wouldn't go, just use SRAM ones and they'll work and they'll be great. I don't really get into the whole mix matching. I've heard of people being determined to do it and then they run some of one side of their pistons further out to compensate, but that's going to compromise the brake power, and it seems like a kind of a vicious circle. You're getting nice expensive floating rotors to increase brake power and performance, and all that comes with that, and then you're having to run your caliper in a compromised setup to run. Why? I would say, I know floating rotors look great, they have that bling factor, but SRAM ones will work great, and just stick with what the manufacturer intended. I've spoken to brake manufacturers and saying they get frustrated because people use the wrong rotors, and it actually does make a difference. And in their tests, they test them to maximize the package. So don't undermine that by trying to second guess them. And there we go, quite a solid range of topics. And if you do need me to mediate with any bike shop, hit me up on 0800 mediate and I'll be there in a flash. I'll even bring some tea and biscuits to really get the conversation flowing. Maybe one of those talking spoons, Only talk if you're holding the wooden spoon. We'll see what happens. As always, guys, please get in the comments. Ask GMBN Tech. Let's get your question on the show. Thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to follow us all over social media, Instagram, Facebook, and of course on YouTube. Like and subscribe, guys. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.